Hello, friends. The 968th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. For the first time in a long time, Russian troops have advanced into the city blocks of Chasiv Yar in the Bakhmut direction. According to the Deep State Telegram channel, they have captured part of the Vyshneve microdistrict, which is located west of the Seversky Donetsk Donbas channel. That is, the defense of the Ukrainian armed forces along the canal, which has been holding back Russian attacks since July, has been broken through. At the same time, fighting is already underway in most of the Vyshneve district, judging by the gray zone on the Deep State map. Military analyst for the German newspaper Bild Julian Rerp writes that the Russian army has broken through the Ukrainian front south of Chasiv Yar and planted its flag on an industrial building 2.5 kilometers beyond the canal. Other Western media outlets are also writing about the growing problems with the defense of Chasiv Yar. The positions of the Ukrainian armed forces in the city are beginning to weaken, the Wall Street Journal reports, having spoken with Ukrainian military personnel on the spot. This week, the Russians managed to break through in two areas. It is enough to make one mistake, and Chasiv Yar could fall in a matter of days, says company commander Kruhliakivka. This advance could mean a significant step by Russia to capture the city. And the loss of Chasiv Yar, along with Pokrovsk, is key in Moscow's attempts to capture the Donetsk region. Analysts believe that the Russians want to capture both cities before the rains and mud arrive. Russia's active offensive on Chasiv Yar began in the second half of May when Ukraine withdrew part of its troops from there to stop the breakthrough to Vovchansk. In early July, the Russian army captured the eastern part of the city, the canal district, but ran into the water barrier itself, along which the Ukrainian armed forces organized a defense. After that, the Russians repeatedly attempted to cross the canal, and sometimes successfully, but the breakthroughs were usually stopped by Ukrainian units. Nevertheless, last week the Russians managed to get beyond the canal north and south of Chasiv Yar. And now they have broken through into the city itself. Ukrainian military say that Russian troops have begun using a lot of armored vehicles in this area. Mechanized assault actions in the Bakhmut direction were rare, but now the situation is changing. Periodically, boxes with landing troops come to visit us. They burn, die in the forest belts, but on orders they climb further. Now this is not critical, but if it grows into 30 to 40 units of equipment, it will be very difficult, said a soldier of the Ukrainian army Selydove. To the south of Selydove, Russian troops, according to Deep State, have come even closer to the highway that leads to Kurakhove. The enemy plans to cut this road as part of the encirclement of Selydove. The encirclement of our garrison in Selydove continues. The enemy is trying to advance on a broad front, moving along the railway towards Vyshneve and southwest to Novodmytrivka. Thus, their task is to cut the road leading to Selydove. From the north, they are trying to completely cut the highway from Pokrovsk, which will lead to the loss of ammunition, writes a Ukrainian fighter with the call sign Muchnoy. The situation in Selydove is far from the best and requires certain actions, because the enemy is moving exclusively along the flanks, and if these advances continue, then at one point the situation will be very, very bad, adds an officer of the Ukrainian army with the call sign Alex. Deep State also confirms the advance of Russian troops to the east of Kurakhove and the capture of most of Maksymilianivka. Yesterday, the Russians published footage of their flag in the center of the village and announced the complete capture of the settlement. We are clarifying information about the enemy's presence throughout the settlement. Although based on the situation, it will not be long before the western part of Maksymilianivka is taken under control. In this area, we should expect a map update, wrote Deep State. While I was preparing the material, a Ukrainian fighter with the call sign Muchnoy wrote that the enemy is conducting a cleanup in the direction of Maksymilianivka. Some of our soldiers who were still in the basements were captured. The Russians were able to advance to the south of the settlement, Now their units can attack Kurakhove from here, and they can also reach the rear of Bogoyavlenka, cutting off ammunition supplies in Uspannivka. Fighting also continues in Katerinivka, where the southern side of the settlement is under the enemy, writes Muchnoy. The Main Intelligence Directorate announces the liberation and clearing of the village of Kruhliakivka in the Kupiansk section of the Kharkiv direction. According to its information, the operation to regain control over the settlement, which is important for the defense of Kupiansk, lasted from October 7 to 14. I would like to note that nothing was previously known about the capture of Kruhliakivka by the Russians. The military telegram channel Deep State invariably referred to this village as the zone of control of the armed forces of Ukraine. That is, judging by the reports of the Main Intelligence Directorate, Russian units nevertheless broke through to Kruhliakivka, but, as they say, were driven out from there. At the same time, Ukrainian expert Petrenko reported today that the armed forces of Ukraine destroyed enemy equipment in the northern part of Kruhliakivka along Kupiansk Street. Unfortunately, this indicates that Russian troops managed to enter the settlement, he wrote. Kruhliakivka is located on the banks of the Oskil and is of great importance for the logistics of the Ukrainian army south of Kupiansk. The capture of the village would allow Russian troops to cut the Ukrainian group on the eastern bank of the Oskil. Yesterday, the head of the Main Intelligence Directorate Budanov told the war zone that about 11,000 North Korean soldiers are completing training in Russia and will be ready to fight against Ukraine as early as November 1. According to him, the North Koreans will be armed with Russian equipment and ammunition. The first detachment of 2,600 soldiers will go to the Kursk region. Where the rest will go is unclear. Right now, we do not have a complete picture, Budanov said. Today, the Center for Combating Fake News at the Ministry of Culture of Ukraine has published a video, allegedly of North Korean soldiers in Russia. They are receiving Russian uniforms at the Sergeyevsky training ground in the Russian Far East, the center says. The footage is reportedly no more than 72 hours old. At the same time, the Kremlin officially denies plans to send Korean troops to the front in Ukraine. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.